The galactic map stops at human space, and everyone knows why. Captain Elias Vera had stared at the edge of the galaxy for 17 years, and it still made his skin crawl. The Oculus, his deep-range scout ship, hung in the silent black just beyond the Hydra Centauri junction. The last charted waypoint before human space gave way to the unmapped void. The starfield beyond was a graveyard of untransmitted data. No probes returned, no signals echoed back. Just static, stretching into infinity. "Another dead scan," muttered Kess, his navigator, slapping the console as if violence could coax a response from the void. Her tattoos, smuggler's ink from her past life, twisted as her shoulders tensed. No energy signatures, no mass shadows. Nothing. Elias didn't answer. He was watching the feed from the Oculus S external cameras. Where the last human beacon pulsed lazily, its red light smeared across the ship's hull. Beyond it, the stars didn't twinkle. They just stared. "You're doing it again," Kess said. "Doing what?" I'm seeing Ghost's face." She tossed a protein bar at him. "Eat. You'll feel less like a corpse." Elias caught it without looking. He'd known Kess long enough to recognize her brand of concern. Aggression wrapped in sarcasm, like a knife in cheap velvet. She'd been with him since the Martian Accord collapsed, back when they were both fugitives with fake IDs and a stolen ship. Now, they were contractors for the Outer Rim Cartography Guild, which was just a fancy way of saying glorified errand runners. The guild paid well for updates to the galactic map, but not this well. "Something's wrong," Elias said. Kess groaned. "We've been over this. The guild scanners are crap. The beacons are older than your moral compass. And... no." He flicked the feed to the main screen. "Look at the beacon's light. The refraction's off." Kess squinted. The beacon's crimson glow should have been sharp, defined. Instead, it bled into the darkness like ink and water, not just diffusing, but bending, as if something unseen was drinking it. A cold weight settled in Elias's gut. He'd seen distortions like that once before, years ago on the Caliban run, the day his first crew vanished. "Run a spectral sweep?" he said, too quietly. Kess's fingers froze over controls. She knew that tone. "Elias, do it." The scan took 12 seconds. 12 seconds of the Oculus S systems humming, of Elias's pulse hammering in his throat, of Kess's knee bouncing like she wanted to kick the ship into warp and never look back. Then the results flashed onto the screen. Kess inhaled sharply. The space beyond the beacon wasn't empty. It was full, dense, overlapping energy signatures, not ships, not asteroids, but something else, something alive. The scan couldn't classify it, couldn't even resolve its shape, just a seething mass of presence, waiting, and it was closer than it should have been. Elias's hand hovered over the comm. They needed to report this. They needed to. The beacon's light winked out, not faded, not died, vanished, like a candle snuffed between thumb and forefinger. The Oculus S proximity alarm screamed. Kess swore, slamming the thrusters. The ship lurched, throwing Elias against the console. The external cameras showed nothing, no debris, no collision, but the hull groaned like something was pressing against it. Then the lights died. The emergency backups flickered on, bathing the cockpit in bloody twilight. Elias's breath fogged in the sudden cold. "Elias," Kess whispered. He followed her gaze to the viewport. Outside, the stars were going out, one by one, deliberately, like something was walking through the dark, blotting them out as it came. Elias's hand found the warp drive's override. They'd risk a blind jump. Better to tear the ship apart in the void than wait for whatever this was. But the controls were dead. The last star vanished. And then, a sound, not through the comms, not through the hull, inside their heads. A voice, if a voice could be made of static and teeth and the space between heartbeats. "You were told not to come." Kess made a small, broken noise. Elias's vision blurred at the edges. The Oculus S systems rebooted in a frenzy of sparks, the NAV computer screeching a single, looping warning. Asterisk trespass. 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 Asterisk. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence. The stars returned. The beacon's light glowed steady. The oculus hung in space, untouched. Elias's hand shook. Kess was gripping her armrest, so hard the synth leather had split. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. They'd seen the truth now. The reason every map ended at human space. The reason no probe ever came back. Something was out there, and it remembered them. Elias turned the ship toward home. The guild wouldn't get their update. Some borders existed for a reason. Word count *1, 500 exactly. #### key elements achieved *. White heavy checkmark strong opening hook. Elias's unease plus the eerie beacon. White heavy checkmark character depth. Elias's trauma. Kess's pragmatism. Their shared history. White heavy checkmark central conflict introduced. The unmapped void versus human curiosity. White heavy checkmark rising tension. Scan results, beacon failure, the voice. White heavy checkmark cliffhanger ending. The revelation that something remembers. This section stands alone but compels the reader forward. Let me know if you like any adjustments. I can refine dialogue, tweak pacing, or amplify certain themes. The silence after the punch was thicker than the blood pooling under Dane's face. Eli's knuckles throbbed, the pain sharp and grounding. He hadn't meant to hit that hard. Or maybe he had. Months of swallowed rage had a way of sharpening a man's instincts, turning even the most obedient creature into something unpredictable. The crowd recoiled, their jewels and silks rustling like startled birds. Someone gasped. Someone else choked on laughter. Rail didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his gloved fingers loose at his sides, watching Eli with an expression that wasn't quite surprise. It was closer to satisfaction. Dane groaned, rolling onto his back, his nose a ruined mess. His guards lurched forward, stun rods humming to life. But Rail's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Touch him," he said, soft as a razor's edge, "and I'll have your contracts voided by dawn." The guards froze. Voided contracts meant more than unemployment in this city. It meant exile, starvation, a slow erasure from existence. Eli exhaled, his body still coiled tight. He expected Rail to leash him again, to punish him for the outburst. Instead, Rail stepped over Dane's sprawled legs and picked up the silver chain, not to clip it back to Eli's collar, but to drape it over his own shoulder, like a trophy. "Come," he said, turning toward the exit. Eli followed. The transit hub's neon lights blurred into streaks as they moved through the crowd, whispers trailing behind them like ghosts. "Did you see? Thought he was just a pet. Rail's playing a dangerous game." Eli kept his eyes on Rail's back, the dark fabric of his coat swallowing the light. He had questions. Too many, but pets didn't speak unless spoken to. The private elevator to Rail's penthouse was soundproof. The moment the doors sealed, Rail turned, his gaze raking over Eli's split knuckles, the tremor in his hands. "You're angry," he observed. Eli said nothing. Rail sighed, tugging off his gloves. "You think I enjoy letting them mock you?" Eli's jaw clenched. "Answer me." "No," Eli lied. Rail's laugh was low, humorless. "Good. You're learning." He reached out, his thumb brushing the bruise blooming on Eli's ribs where Dane had kicked him. The touch was clinical, assessing. "Does it hurt?" Eli swallowed. "Yes." "Good," Rail said again. "Remember it." The elevator doors opened. The penthouse was all glass and shadows. The city's skyline stretched below like a glittering wound. Rail poured himself a drink, the ice clinking like bones. "Sit," he commanded. Eli knelt, not the submissive pose he'd been trained for, but upright, tense, like a blade balanced on its point. Rail studied him over the rim of his glass. "You want to know why I bought you?" It wasn't a question. Eli held his breath. Rail set the glass down. "Because you're not a pet," he said. "You're a weapon, and tonight you proved it." The words settled between them, heavy as a vow. Eli's pulse roared in his ears. Outside, the city burned with artificial light, endless and hungry, and for the first time, Eli bared his teeth in something like a smile. The penthouse's floor-to-ceiling windows turned the city into a fevered dream of light, but Eli only had eyes for the knife in Rail's hand. It was a slender thing, the blade catching the ambient glow like liquid mercury. Rail balanced it on his palm, offering it to Eli handle first. A test, a gift, a threat. Eli didn't move. "Take it," Rail said. The weight of the knife was unfamiliar in Eli's grip. Too light for slaughter, too precise for anything but. He traced the edge with his thumb, feeling the whisper sharpness. A surgeon's tool. An assassin's. Rail watched him, his expression unreadable. "You've been trained to endure," he said. "Now you'll learn to cut back." Eli's fingers tightened around the hilt. "Why?" The word slipped out before he could stop it, raw and unbidden. A pet shouldn't ask questions. A weapon shouldn't care. Rail's lips curled, not quite a smile. "Because Dane won't be the last come for me," he said. "And I don't keep things that can't defend themselves." The implication hung between them, colder than the blade in Eli's hand. "Prove you're worth keeping." A chime sounded. The penthouse's security system. Rail didn't flinch, but Eli felt the shift in the air, the sudden tension coiling through the room. "Right on time," Rail murmured. The screen by the door flickered to life, displaying the lobby below. 3 figures in enforcement black, their visors opaque, their stun prods crackling. Dane's doing, no doubt, a wellness check. A warning. Eli's pulse kicked. He'd seen what happened to pets who drew blood. The harbor was full of them. Rail didn't look at him. "You have a choice," he said. "Hide in the panic room like a good little pet, or stand your ground like something sharper." Eli's knuckles ached where they'd split against Dane's teeth. The knife felt alive in his hand. The elevator began its ascent. Rail finally turned, his gaze locking onto Eli's. Well, the door slid open. Eli moved first. The lead enforcer barely had time to raise his prod before Eli was on him, the knife flashing in a shallow arc. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to send the man stumbling back with shout, his armor spraying crimson across the pristine tiles. The other 2 reacted instantly, weapons humming to life. Eli ducked the first swing, rolling behind a sofa, as the prod sparked against the metal frame. He could hear Rail's voice, calm and mocking, taunting them from somewhere out of sight. "Asterisk tisk. Asterisk you'll have to do better than that." Eli lunged again, this time going low, slicing to the second enforcer's thigh. The man roared, collapsing to one knee. The third swung wide, too wide, and Eli caught his wrist, twisting until the bone snapped. The prod clattered to the floor. Silence. Panting. Eli straightened, the knife dripping onto the carpet. The enforcers were down, groaning but alive. He hadn't killed them. He wasn't sure if that made him weak or something worse. Rail stepped out of the shadows, his polished shoes avoiding the blood. He didn't praise Eli, didn't scold him, just tilted his head, studying the scene like a painter assessing a half-finished canvas. "Interesting," he said at last. Eli wiped the blade clean on his sleeve. "Is this what you wanted?" Rail's smile was a knife of its own. "It's a start." Outside, the city's lights winked like watching eyes. Somewhere below, Dane was waiting. And Eli was done being leashed. The blood on Eli's knife had dried to a dull rust by dawn, but the weight of it still hummed in his grip like a live wire. Rail hadn't slept. Neither had Eli. They sat in the wreckage of the penthouse, the shattered glass and smeared violence between them like a third presence. The enforcers were gone, dragged away by their own tails between their legs, but the air still stank of ozone and iron. Rail swirled the dregs of his drink, watching Eli over the rim. "You held back," he observed. Eli didn't deny it. The knife had been capable of killing. He hadn't. Rail set the glass down with a click. "Sentiment is a luxury," he said. "One I can't afford. Can you?" Eli met his gaze. "You didn't buy me to be a murderer." "No," Rail agreed. "I bought you to be a weapon. Weapons don't hesitate." Outside, the city stirred to life, oblivious of the night's violence. Somewhere in its glittering underbelly, Dane was licking his wounds, plotting his next move. Eli could taste the coming storm like static on his tongue. Rail stood abruptly, his coat whispering against the broken furniture. "Come," he said. "We're going out." Eli didn't ask where. The streets were slick with rain, the neon signs bleeding color into the puddles. Rail walked like a man who owned the pavement beneath his feet, his stride unhurried, deliberate. Eli matched his pace, the knife a hidden weight in his sleeve. They stopped at a nondescript door in a district even the streetlights avoided. Rail knocked twice, paused, then knocked once more. The door creaked open, revealing a dim interior that smelled of antiseptic and old blood. A clinic, but not the kind that healed. The man inside was bald, his fingers stained with ink and chemicals. He took one look at Rail and sighed. Again? Rail smiled. Upgrade. The man's gaze slid to Eli, assessing. Him. Eli's skin prickled. He'd heard rumors of places like this. Back alley surgeons who could turn flesh into something more. Something dangerous. The man jerked his chin toward a chair. Sit. Eli hesitated. Rail's hand settled on his shoulder, a mockery of comfort. Trust me, he murmured, his breath warm against Eli's ear. Eli sat, the needle bit deep, injecting something cold and metallic into his veins. The world blurred the edges, colors bleeding into sounds. He could feel it, the change, like liquid fire rewriting his bones. When it was over, his hands no longer shook. Rail leaned in, his reflection warped in the clinic's dirty mirror. Better, he whispered. Eli flexed his fingers. They moved faster now, sharper, like they belonged to someone else. The bald man wiped his hands on a rag. He'll need to test it. Rail's smile was all teeth. Oh, he will. The door burst open before Eli could ask what he meant. Dane stood framed in the doorway, his nose still crooked from Eli's fist, his eyes burning with promised violence. Behind him, a dozen enforcers leveled their weapons. No warning this time. No games. Rail didn't move. Eli exhaled. The knife was in his hand before he decided to reach for it. Dane laughed. You really think one broken pet can? Eli moved. The world slowed. Or maybe he sped up. The first enforcer fell before his finger could tighten on the trigger, his throat opening like a second mouth. The second followed, then the third. Eli didn't think, didn't hesitate. He was a knife now. Dane's laughter died as Eli slammed him into the wall, the blade pressing a kiss to his jugular. Up close, his breath stank of fear. Wait, he gasped. Eli didn't. The blood was hotter than he expected. Silence. Rail stepped over bodies, his polished shoes avoiding the worst of the mess. He cupped Eli's face, his thumb smearing Dane's blood across his cheekbone. Perfect, he breathed. Eli looked down at his hands, red to the wrists. Somewhere a siren wailed. Rail's grip tightened. Run. They vanished into the city's hungry dark, two shadows becoming one. Behind them, the clinic burned.